Now, I used to think that a good photograph needed loads going on, you know, epic light, big dramatic skies and textured foregrounds, the whole lot. But over time, I've really come to realize that I much prefer the simpler photographs, the simpler scenes that have got space to breathe, you know. And that goes for not only my own photographs actually, but other photographers' photographs. That's just the photography that I prefer. So in this video, I want to share a few photographs that I suppose over the years have really taught me that lesson. Some photographs that are very busy, a lot of my older ones in fact, that I just don't feel worked at all, even though in the moment it felt like the right thing to do. And hopefully some other photographs as well that are a lot simpler and will help me explain exactly what I mean. So let's get into it. So I want to start here with a couple of images that I took at the fairy pools in the Isle of Skye, and this is the first image. You know what? I actually don't think this is that bad of an image. There's a lot worse in this list that I'll share in this video. I think this one, although quite busy, there was a heck of a lot of thought that went into all of the busyness, if that makes sense, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But this image, I feel like, oh, this location, actually, I feel like just needs to be kept simple. Look at that beautiful background mountain, that like conical shape there. Absolutely asking for simplicity. There doesn't need to be. The bottom half of the photograph for me here is just way too overcomplicated. And then I moved on to this composition, which from this location is a bit of a classic really. And I just feel like it works so much better. We've kind of got the mountain off in the background, really being able to do its thing, is clearly the main subject. And then I feel like the foreground cascades there just complement the mountain off in the background rather than kind of battling against it. I'll go back to that other image there. It feels like a real battle, you know. I'm looking at that photograph thinking like, where do you want me to look? What's going on here? What's the story? Whereas yeah, this one here feels so lovely and simple. Now, the reason I wanted to start with this particular location, this composition here from the Isle of Skye, was because I also took this image, which was actually taken with my drone. And at the time, I don't think I really thought about it very much, but certainly in hindsight, and certainly now it's been a few years since I took these photographs, I just prefer this image, even more than the one with the simple cascades down in the foreground. And why? Just because it's that much more simple. It is all about that incredible mountain off in the background. You know, yes, we've got foreground, if you want to call it that, with these kind of burns leading up to it. We've got the beautiful textured sky as well. But because it's a square crop, it's all very kind of compressed and stuff as well. And I think the main thing here is that it's very obvious what the main subject is, and I guess what this photograph is all about. And I really feel as if this is what so many photographers get wrong, and why perhaps so many photographers are just not happy with their photographs, their landscape photographs. It's because they're too overcomplicated. It is genuinely that simple. And it's funny because when I was kind of trying to find some photographs to talk about in this video, again, we'll get into them, it was very obvious for me to see that that's how I approached my photography a number of years ago. You know, when I was first starting out, and of course I did. And I certainly wouldn't hold it against anybody, any photographer that's just starting out. The main thing is get out there, have fun, and, you know, make all of these mistakes and stuff like that. As long as you're out with your camera, you're going to get to a point where you realize how you like to photograph. And this, for me, keeping things simple, no complication with composition, less is more, intention, which we'll get into in a little bit. That's probably the word of this video. I feel like that's the way I like to photograph now. And in many ways, it's actually easier because you're looking at a big wide scene like we so often are, even if it's in a woodland or on the coast, you're looking at everything around you. And a lot of the time you're wanting to capture all of that. Whereas the goal is to take things out of the frame, stop trying to photograph everything and stand there with intention, be deliberate about what is going in your little rectangle on the back of your camera or for your viewfinder, whatever, and really take some time to think about it. So we'll get into another photograph here. There's a couple from a beautiful snowy afternoon near Tannhaus in the Lake District National Park. And this is, to be honest, this is perhaps another bad example of a complicated image. I don't think it's that complicated. We've probably got the big tall tree as one main subject, and then a nice strip of background trees. And it's nice because we had a flurry of snowfall, the background fells are very, very faint, and it helps to simplify the photograph as well. But when I actually compare it to this image, which is from exactly the same location, oh my gosh, this is one of my favourite ever photographs that I've taken. And I can't actually remember what I called this photograph. I've just remembered, it's called The Sulking Sapling. I love that name. Look at the sapling there on the bottom right hand side, and it looks like his father just next to him there is having a go at him. The rest of the family are having a chat off in the distance. But for me, going back to the point of this video, is it's so simple compared to that other photograph, the previous one, which again, maybe not a good example because it's hardly very complicated. This is just so nice and simple. There's no background fells whatsoever. It's still about the story of the snowfall and these kind of 5 or 6 trees that we've got here. So simple, nothing complex at all. And most importantly, I'll go back to that word intention again. I remember standing there in the snow with intention, changing my focal length, zooming in, you know, really making sure that everything in my little box on my LCD screen, in my 3:2 aspect ratio or whatever, was deliberate and was chosen by me. And that is a good segue into getting into this next photograph. Now again, this is a bit of an older photograph that was taken near Buttermere in the Lake District, and I think this is Sour Milk Gill, the kind of beck that you could see, well, the gill that you could see down in the foreground. And this is a good example of how I definitely shot in the past. It feels to me like I was almost halfway there. I'm going to give myself that amount of credit. The background spoke for itself, beautiful. We had a little section of Buttermere there, some nice dusted fell tops, they're dusted with the snow. And it's just all about the bottom half of the photograph. It does my head in to look at it now, to be honest. It's so messy and I don't really know what the story is, but I know at the time that I would have felt like I was doing the right thing, and I think that's good. Even if you're in that middle section where you know what you're doing. I wasn't just photographing a big, massive, wide scene. This is a good example of a photograph that to me is kind of somewhere in the middle. I was trying to find some foreground to complement the background, but it was just still well too messy. And here, look, right, I've been talking about intention, and this is so important. I feel like the focal length, which was probably 14 millimeters or, you know, ultra wide, maybe 18 millimeters or something on a full frame, it's the focal length that chose the composition, because it was super wide. And I've spoken about this loads on the channel. So tempting to get the wide angle lens out, point off into a beautiful big vista and be done with it. But that's when we're so disappointed when we get home, because we look at the photograph and there's no photograph. It's just a snapshot of a big, wide, beautiful scene. And yet it can be really frustrating. So instead of letting the focal length dictate your composition, you have to do it yourself. You have to stand there. This is why tripods can be great. I don't use them as much as I did in the past, but you've got your camera on a tripod and you're just taking your time. You're zooming in and out. You might take the camera off the tripod, move left to right, up and down a little bit. You have to make the decisions as to what's in your photograph. It's so, well, I suppose it's so simple when you put it like that, and kind of try and get rid of that temptation to just photograph everything. This is an image from Uist up in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, one of my favourite places that I've ever photographed. And do you not just think this image screams simplicity? There's nothing to it. In fact, what's the main subject? It's that simple. You could argue there's not even a main subject. I mean, it's probably the textured sand, isn't it? Which takes up the bottom 2/3 of the photograph. I mean, the bottom 3/4 really. Oh man, like, I love this photograph so much. And do you know what? This is critical here. And you hear this a lot. Sometimes I feel like it can sound a little bit arty-farty, but I can imagine myself, I can hear the water, I can feel the wind on my skin as I'm taking this photograph. And I think, in a way, even if it's just with your own photographs, that's such a positive sign. That's a good sign of, let's say, a well-composed photograph. Because that one up on Sour Milk Gill that I showed you before, I don't really get that. I can remember taking the photograph and I can remember faffing around for a while, but I can't feel it. Here, it's like Again, a bit cliche, a little bit cringy maybe, but I feel like I'm being transported back to that wonderful beach on Uist. So simple. Beautiful textured lines in the sand leading off to the kind of turquoise water, and then the little hill and the textured sky. Absolutely nothing to it. It would have been, genuinely, a really tempting location to just shoot a big wide angle photograph with the wide angle just pointed at eye level directly in front of me, trying to get it all, the hills, the sand. It's that bit there where you stop as a photographer and you think, no, that is not the right approach. I know I'm going to be disappointed with this. Put your bag down, put your camera down even, and start breaking down the scene differently. That is exactly what I did here. The beach was stunning, but I took my time and I thought, if I take a big wide angle photograph of everything that I'm seeing here, or take the drone up and shoot everything, I know I'm going to be disappointed. I need to take the time here, and this is critical, to actually build a photograph rather than taking a wide angle snapshot. This is another one here, local to me. Conditions are quite nice in a local woodland. It's just so messy, man. Like puddles all over the place. Like what's going on that far sort of left-hand side behind the rock? Just a mess of sticks and twigs. Sticks kind of going horizontally across the frame. I like the background with the sort of foggy trees and the rocks kind of dotted around. That's good. And that's why I then moved to this photograph, which was in exactly the same spot, but I just moved around a little bit. And it's more like the foreground. I've kept that same background that obviously I was really attracted to, and I've just simplified the foreground. That is it. Here's another photograph when I was out with Ian Worth and Adam Gibbs and Paul Thompson in the Highlands of Scotland near Torridon. And again, I mean, look at the background, look at the snowy mountains and the textured sky. You could probably imagine how easy it would be to just shoot a big wide photograph of all the epic mountains, maybe get some of the trees down in the foreground. The problem is, I might have felt like I was doing the right thing, and maybe that's the difference. It's beyond that feeling you're just doing the right thing and kind of knowing what you're doing with your little frame. Because here, I decided not to shoot wide. I found this nice little collection of trees. Yes, I still got a bit of the background in and that incredible sky, but it was a lot more intentional and thoughtful and deliberate. I guess it's just about taking your time and trying to deliberately simplify your photograph. Like, look at this. I don't want to rip into myself or anything, because this is when I was, you know, not long back from New Zealand, still in awe of just going out and taking photographs, but there's nothing there, man. This is in the Shropshire Hills. There's no photograph. Like, it's just someone gets to the top of the hill, they get the phone out and take a snapshot. And I'm the first to say there's nothing wrong with that, but we all want to take photographs here, don't we? Like, again, maybe like the sour milk gill photograph, I'll try and give myself a bit of credit. You can maybe see that I was trying to do something. Maybe without the rock down in the foreground, it would have just been a big snapshot of nothing, of a view. But perhaps that I was trying to find a rock to complement the background, to place down in the foreground, to anchor the image. Yeah, perhaps I should give myself a little bit of credit for that. So again, maybe that's another one that's sort of halfway there. Here on Home Fell, focal length. That's what I wanted to talk about in this video. And I'm glad this image has reminded me, because that is half of the battle. It's using your focal length to zoom in. Use your telephoto lens, use your long lenses, crop as you're out on location, zoom in with your lens. Don't just be tempted to shoot wide all the time. This is simple. It's just a photograph where I've zoomed in slightly, honed in on exactly what I want to photograph, live cropping. And I've looked at it, and everything that is in that frame is intentional. It's deliberate, bar that little bit of tree at the bottom center of the frame, and that's just me being honest. I'll probably go back to that one and crop it a little bit, but at least these videos made me realize that, you know. I'll show you a couple more images, and then there's something really important that I want to talk about with regards to this topic, because it has to be mentioned. Here's another one when I was out with Ian Worth, wild camping. I was using the little Sony RX100 compact camera, and again, it's just focal length. That camera is capable of shooting at 24mm, so pretty wide, but I didn't want to shoot everything at 24mm, even though it's most tempting to do that when you're on the top of a mountain. I zoomed in a little bit down into the Ogwen Valley, and it just made the image so much better. Live cropping, so simple. So maybe try that one when you're next out. And you know, this one, the last couple of images have been good examples. It's not all about wide angle. You can still get too much in your photograph, you can still overcomplicate your photograph regardless of the focal length. Even if you zoomed in at 400 millimeters, you can still do the same thing, because at the end of the day, it's all about being intentional with your composition. This image, really close to home, so simple. I feel like I always go back to this photograph, but I love it. And all of these images that I like so much, it's because they're simple. I keep using that word. It's just the salt marshes, a couple of nice pools, black and white, which simplifies it even more. We're not distracted by colour. And it's an emotion, it brings an emotion of like a really nice stormy evening out with the camera. And I don't know, this is the bit that I wish I could explain better in this video. Sometimes I don't know what it is exactly. It just feels better. It feels like there's more room in the photograph. It breathes. You know what the photograph's about. Yeah, I don't know. It just feels right. Now, I wanted to talk about complexity in the sense of how sometimes it can work. I don't want to paint a picture here that you have to always go out and take images like, let me find another one. Well, let's go back to this used one where everything's got to be really, really simple, you know? Or this one here where I'm zoomed right in on a giant landscape. To me, if you look at this image here, you could argue that it's still quite complex in a sense. There's a lot going on. You know, you've got the path, we've got the light streaming in from the top left, you've got all the trees, you've got a big play of light and shadow. You've got a difference in temperature ever so slightly, very warm at the top left-hand side of the image, and then the shadowed areas are obviously a lot cooler. So again, you could argue that there's still quite a lot of complexity to this photograph, but it comes back to intention, deliberate. You have to look at your frame, make sure there's nothing sticking in from the edges like that last photograph or the photograph before with the trees. Think about everything, almost every pixel that is on your LCD screen or through your viewfinder is thought about, and you, as the photographer, have decided to put it there. Here's another one, look. Too complicated compared to that. Look, just a straight square shot of Colwood Force there, like, why? I don't need all of the foreground and stuff. Now, this is another image here that to me, perhaps could be viewed as quite complex. You know, there's a lot going on. The light streaming in from the left-hand side, you've got a very textured sky. You're looking down into a valley, you've got the mountains, Langdale Pikes. You've got a rock down in the foreground. You've got heather all over the place. You've got dry stone walls. There's a lot off in the distance. But again, I'm going to say it. It's intention. You're like composing with the chaos, if that makes sense. You're making the choices. You're not letting the wide angle, in this case, make the decision. You're not being in awe of a big grand landscape and shooting wide just for the sake of it. And every element, and again, this photograph I think is a really good example, every element, every shape, everything in that photograph has to earn its place. And that is your decision as the photographer. And again, you're not just letting the focal length dictate it, because you just, oh, that's mint, look at that, 40 millimeters, bang. And again, that's why you get home and you're disappointed with your images. So to try and finish off with some more practical takeaways, I suppose, and we've touched upon some of them already, is I like to try and treat my photographs as shapes sometimes. So we'll stick with this image. Imagine it's just shapes. You've got kind of like a kind of jagged shape in the bottom right. You've got the strip of the heather, which is a shape going across, and it kind of matches it. It's like diagonal. Then you've got the diagonal of the valley. You've got the shapes of the mountain tops of the Langdale Pikes and the distant fells that are kind of jutting up into the sky in the right place, in the kind of top third, top quarter of the frame. And then even the strip of the sky at the top, it's earned its place. It's an element that I want there deliberately. It's not happen chance. It's not an accident. It's all just like several shapes throughout the photograph. Here is another photograph from North Wales. It just doesn't work. It's so messy. Again, I can remember that I was trying to get some trees to complement all of these old barracks here in this quarry, but it's just well messy, isn't it? Like, if I was to go back there, which I will do, I'll maybe try and just focus on the barracks. I don't need the trees, they don't have to be there. Or if I'm going to have the trees there, it's got to be a heck of a lot more intentional. You know, the trees on the right hand side are fairly nice, but they're just jutting into a load of the barracks, blocking them off. They're not adding anything to the photograph. The trees on the left hand side are just an absolute nightmare. Like what's going on there? They're sort of sticking into the barracks a little bit as well. You know, they don't support the photograph, so I need to remove these trees in some sort of way or work on them a little bit more. Less is more. A lot of what makes a good composition good is about what's not in the photograph, and unfortunately a lot of the time, I'm trying to run through it in this video, but a lot of the time, most of the time, when you look at a good photograph, you don't know, unless it's your photograph, you don't know what the photographer's done, you don't know what he or she has left out of the frame, you don't know how intentional they've been. They might have been there for 2 hours faffing around with the tripod and the camera. But if it's a good photograph, if it makes you feel something, they've done the right thing. So yeah, I think once I started looking at my photographs as shapes and space, and then it's like a jigsaw, I've got to try and make it all fit, rather than looking at it like that, rather than looking at it like a scene, real life almost, which kind of, I've always felt sounds quite strange, because we're out in the landscape, we're enjoying it, we're feeling it, we want to be part of the landscape. But I feel like that real pragmatic approach when it comes to composition, where it's shapes and space, and you're doing it all on your little 2D screen or whatever, or even when your camera's in your bag and you're looking, you're still doing the same thing. You're like, right, imagine you're like frigging picking stuff up in a way, which you kind of do have that power as a photographer with composition, because all right, you can't pick the old tree up and pull it out of its roots, but you can move to the left a little bit and choose where the tree goes. The tree goes a bit to the right. You can move down a little bit, so the tree might jut up and go above some fells, rather than kind of being kind of mushed up against the background fells and lost, and it starts feeling messy. You know, you can maybe move backwards up the hill a little bit, so the tree becomes a lot smaller in the frame. You've got that power to move all of these shapes around your frame. So yeah, nowadays I try my best to just keep things simpler. I think it's a fantastic approach, and for me, it's just made me feel so much happier with my photographs, with my compositions. I feel a lot more confident when I'm kind of out on location composing photographs. You know, not every image needs to have 5, 6, 7 things going on and 4 or 5 subjects. Like I said before, complicated and complex can work, but word of the day, it still needs to be intentional. So let me know down in the comments, do you find yourself overcomplicating your compositions, or have you found a way to make complexity work for you, like I think I have a lot of the time? It can be tough, especially in certain scenes, think woodland. And I'll leave you with this. I think it's fun. I think this, looking back over the past several years, is my favourite part of landscape photography, is stopping, chilling out. If I've got a little flask or a packet of Monster Munch or something, that's my favourite part, when you get that seed, that spark of, oh, you know what, I think there's a photograph here. And then you take the time to be intentional and to be deliberate and to start building a photograph and a composition. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed this video, something a little bit different. And yeah, I shall see you on the next adventure. Out.